It's 2024 and Godzilla has never been more popular or profitable, and for a character that debuted in 1954, that's pretty impressive. In this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into Godzilla and try to figure out why after 70 years, it finally seems like Godzilla is getting some respect. First, let's talk about the history of Godzilla. Now, this is not going to be a complete overview of everything that Godzilla has ever done. I just want to catch everyone up to what's been happening with the franchise and how we got to where we are in 2024. The first Godzilla movie was released in 1954, and it was a dark, gritty, somber movie about the effects of nuclear war. Since day one, Godzilla has always been a symbol. He's not just some giant monster destroying things for fun. Speaking on the original 1954 film, producer Tomoyaki Tanaka stated, "The theme of the film from the beginning was the terror of the bomb. Mankind had created the bomb, and now nature was going to take revenge on mankind." Director Ishiro Honda said if Godzilla had been a dinosaur or some other animal, he would have been killed by just one cannonball. But if he were to be equal to an atomic bomb, we wouldn't know what to do. So I took the characteristics of an atomic bomb and applied them to Godzilla. Godzilla quickly became a massive success, and all these years later, we now have 38 Godzilla films, making Godzilla one of the longest-running film franchises of all time. Throughout its history, Godzilla has been a good guy, a bad guy, the protector of Earth, a father, even a lover. Godzilla has a rogues gallery of villains that would put Batman and Superman to shame. He's had so many different designs, he even went on a diet once. Godzilla has been so successful over the years that the franchise has been able to introduce characters and make those characters so successful that they can go on and create an entire franchise of solo movies by themselves. Godzilla is the most important and most popular giant monster in all of film and cinema history. When people call Godzilla the king of the monsters, yeah, they're right. So why now, 70 years after his debut, is Godzilla the most popular and most profitable he's ever been? Well, I actually think the reasons are pretty simple and straightforward. The first one is that last year, we got the best Godzilla movie ever made, Godzilla Minus One. I remember the first things I heard when Minus One was premiering over in Japan was that people were leaving the screenings crying. I could not wrap my head around it. I had to assume that this was like some exaggeration or something, but then all the reviews were rolling in and they said that this was the best Godzilla movie ever made. You gotta understand, as a Godzilla fan, I was always excited when new movies would be announced for sure, but I always kind of knew we would never get anything that would touch the emotion and depth of the 1954 movie. The human characters don't suck in that movie, the action is great obviously for the time, and like 1954, how can I describe it? It's like a movie. It's not just what people think of a Godzilla movie, monster just destroying things and nothing else matters. And at least here in North America, in pop culture, Godzilla was just a giant monster that destroyed things. There wasn't really any depth or substance to any of the North American Godzilla movies that were made. And I still say, up until Minus One, Godzilla was still nerdy and underground. Like, it wasn't cool nerdy like Marvel or Star Wars. It was still nerdy, if that makes any sense. But that all changed with Minus One. So as soon as I could, I got tickets for the first showing that was available in my city for Minus One, and I remember going in thinking, alright, I'm gonna go in with not these crazy expectations, even though I heard people were leaving the movie theater crying, and this was the greatest Godzilla movie, greatest monster movie of all time. I went in, assumed that was kind of just, hyperbole, and I took that out of my mind. And I remember leaving the theater and thinking, yeah, that was the greatest Godzilla movie I've ever seen. I understand why people left the movie theater crying after seeing Minus One. It's the best story in the entire Godzilla franchise. It's easily the best human characters that we've ever gotten in the franchise. Like, nothing even comes close. Maybe 1954. It's such a great story that you could take Godzilla out of the movie and it would still be a great war movie. You know what I mean? And you can't say that about any other Godzilla movie. The human characters are great. It's one of the only, this is how you know it's a great Godzilla movie, because it's one of the only Godzilla movies, maybe the only one, where you really don't want Godzilla to go in and just destroy and take everybody out. You care about these human characters and the people in the cities. And not to mention that after 70 years, Godzilla finally won an Oscar. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but how could you not think this is one of the best Oscar moments of all time? They all came up with little Godzilla figures and toys, and then look at the shoes. Come on, this was amazing. Minus One also set a bunch of records. It's currently the third highest grossing film in US history, but I think the more important and more crazy stat is that Godzilla Minus One made more money in North America than it did in Japan. Godzilla movies historically do not perform that well in North America. In Japan, Minus One made about 48 million, and in the US and Canada, it made 56 million. That's insane. And it was the first time in a long time where I think there was this groundswell of support for a movie. A lot of the big major movie outlets were not covering Godzilla Minus One initially. It wasn't until it started gaining traction here in North America, and then the theatrical run just kept getting extended, and it really was word of mouth, or I guess word of social media, whether it's Reddit or Twitter and stuff like that, where everyone was saying, hey, this isn't just a regular run-of-the-mill Godzilla movie, like, you have to see this. And then I started various, movie influencers and film influencers and stuff like that, picked it up, and then it was really, I can't remember the last time a movie had this, like, groundswell of support. My only issue around Godzilla Minus One was the marketing of this movie and really getting it on streaming services. Toho, the company that owns Godzilla and makes all the Japanese Godzilla movies, waited way too long to get this movie on streaming services. Now, from what I've read, there might have been some contractual stuff because the North American Godzilla X Kong movie was just coming out while the theatrical run of Godzilla Minus One was ending, at least again here in North America. So for like 2 or 3 months, there was no legal way to watch this movie, which resulted in it being one of the most pirated movies in a long, long time. As I said earlier, a lot of Godzilla's place in pop culture has just always been he's a giant monster who breathes fire and smashes things. You gotta remember, for the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s, a lot of the Godzilla movies that were made in Japan were not released anywhere else, and were years and decades before Netflix or easy access to any of these movies. So for a lot of people, Godzilla's place in pop culture was kind of symbolized by the movies, or the movie, that was made here in North America. Now, Toho, the company that makes Godzilla and owns the IP, over the years has been extremely protective of Godzilla. But in 1998, they finally let a North American studio take a crack at Godzilla. So this is a brief history of Godzilla's history in North America. And I think we all know where I'm going to start. Godzilla, 1998. Godzilla 1998, the first time that Toho let anybody else make a movie about Godzilla. And it went horribly wrong. Now, most people are at least aware of this movie, Godzilla 1998, but this was originally supposed to be a trilogy of movies, and Godzilla was originally supposed to look like this. But instead, we of course got one Godzilla movie, and he looked like this. He didn't breathe fire, he was small, he looks more like a velociraptor. It just wasn't Godzilla. But my mom did buy a VHS of this movie, so honestly, it's probably the Godzilla movie that I've seen the most. It was the most readily available Godzilla movie I had for years, so I do have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. It's a good monster movie, it's just a bad Godzilla movie. Toho hated Godzilla 1998 so much, just 1 year later in 1999, they released their own Godzilla movie, Godzilla 2000. Toho also officially renamed Godzilla 1998 to just Zilla to create as much separation between the characters as possible. A lot of veteran Godzilla actors had a lot to say about Godzilla 98. Its face looks like an iguana, and its body and limbs look like a frog. It's not Godzilla, it doesn't have the spirit, and also more bluntly, they kind of just called it a disaster. Now, to defend Godzilla 98 just a little bit, the idea of a smaller, more agile Godzilla that can kind of Spider-Man his way across a city, that's kind of cool. Now, there is some confusion about who actually owns the Godzilla 98 IP. From what I could find and from what I understand, Toho can pretty much do anything with the design of Godzilla 98 as long as they call him Zilla, which includes him getting a minor cameo in Godzilla Final Wars, where he gets destroyed by the real Godzilla, all with Sum 41 blasting in the background. Two more things before we move on from Godzilla 98. We know that there was an actual animatronic built for this Godzilla. Where is it? Does it still even exist? Is it under a tarp somewhere in a warehouse, scaring the crap out of people? Like, where is it? We need to know that it's safe. It should be on display in one of the Godzilla museums. This is a part of Godzilla's history. So after Godzilla 1998, it took 16 years to convince Toho to let somebody else take a crack at making a Godzilla movie. And we finally got a new one in 2014. I've always loved this clip of, I think it's from a Comic-Con, where the director of Godzilla 2014, Garth Edwards, is talking about where he had to cross either into Canada or back to North America where they were filming the movie, and he talks about the like border agents who were looking at his papers. They kind of put together that he was making the new Godzilla movie, and they let him know that he could not mess this one up.
I went away, and he obviously looked me up on the internet, and he came back, he was like, are you directing Godzilla? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, don't fuck it up, man. Because you will never get back into this country again. And I was like, I'll try. And then the guy in the cubicle next to him, the other immigration officer, went, you doing Godzilla? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, don't fuck it up. And then I spent 20 minutes before I could go through, and they told me what it had to include and what had to be part of the movie.
So with 2014, they finally got the Godzilla design right, the atomic breath. I think he has one of the best entrances in all of the Godzilla franchise at the airport when it gets all quiet and everything, but this movie is dark. And I don't mean like dark, gritty, and somber. I mean, it's literally dark. You can't see anything in this movie. And that's been a problem that has plagued every single North American Godzilla movie since 1998. These movies are so incredibly dark, it's literally become a joke inside the Godzilla fandom because these monsters never fight in the day. A lot of people complain about Godzilla's screen time in 2014. It's about 10 minutes, but in Minus One, it's only about 12 minutes, so you can make a great Godzilla movie, and he doesn't have to be on screen all the time. Obviously, everybody would love an entire Godzilla movie where he's just in every single scene, but Minus One proves that he doesn't need to be in every single scene for it to be a great movie. Another one of my big issues with 2014 is spoilers. Bryan Cranston should not have died as early as he did. He should have been the character that we followed through all of the legendary Godzilla movies. I understand money and contracts and all this stuff, but if you could pick one character from 2014 that you take through all of the movies, it would have been him. He was the most interesting character by far, and the human story of that movie just tanks once he, goes bye-bye. Also, the monsters that Godzilla fight in this movie, the Mutos, I think they suck. I think they're so bland, so boring, so generic, so gray, so nothing. I don't know why North America has such a big problem with making interesting giant monsters. I don't care about the Mutos, don't like them. If we never see them again, I'm all good, unless you update the design and make them more interesting. Godzilla 2014 was a success, so we got a sequel, Godzilla King of the Monsters. And we talked about earlier how Toho, it took them a long time to trust anybody besides themselves after 1998. So not only were they trusting a new studio with Godzilla in 2014, but in 2019 they trusted them with Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. Arguably, probably not arguably, the three most popular and most important other monsters besides Godzilla in the entire franchise. It was definitely cool to see all of these monsters on screen with this brand new technology. It had been since, I want to say 2004, since we saw Rodan, Ghidorah, and Mothra. I'm pretty sure that's right, but they made the baffling choice in this movie to make King Ghidorah a giant storm, and you can barely see him the entire movie. One of the dumbest decisions in the entire Godzilla franchise. We also get the queen of the monsters in this movie, Mothra, and I think the design is okay. It's just bland. There's no color around her. I mean, this is supposed to be the queen of the monsters. I've always liked my Mothra a little bit more fluffy, a little bit more colorful. I mean, come on, it's Mothra. I don't want to be overly negative on this movie. I think it kind of sounds like I am, but I love everything they did with Rodan in this movie, kind of living in a volcano, and I love the first time he kind of spreads his wings and you can kind of feel like the molten rocks slowly coming off because he hasn't been awake for all these years, him flying, destroying all of the buildings. All of that stuff was pretty cool. I always like that Rodan is kind of like in the Godzilla franchise, of all of Godzilla's like villains, he's always been kind of like this pest. Like, I think they nailed the personality of Rodan in this movie, where he's a villain in the beginning and he's always kind of like the henchman of the bigger monster. In this movie, it's King Ghidorah, and then when, you know, Ghidorah dies and Rodan is defeated, at the end of the movie, he bows down to Godzilla because he's really just, you know, a big baby, and he always needs to, you know, be aligned with somebody. He would be like the character that always would turn on somebody in like a different movie, and you'd be like, oh yeah, Rodan, you know, turned on me again. Okay, so I think they nailed the look, the design, the personality of Rodan in this movie perfectly. But the human characters suck in this movie, so let's move on. So after Godzilla King of the Monsters, we finally got Godzilla vs. Kong. I can't believe it took Hollywood studios this long to realize that giant fire-breathing lizard, giant monkey fight would make a lot of money. I actually can't believe we don't get more versus movies in Hollywood. I assume it's probably because, like, contracts and disputes and all that, but if Marvel and Sony can figure out how Spider-Man is always in the MCU, I think you can figure out versus movies. Like, how long has it been since we had Freddy versus Jason? That was like forever ago, and we never had a follow-up with any of these like horror, you know, villains or anything like that. I think a versus movie like almost markets itself. Not to mention, the first Godzilla vs. King Kong was released all the way back in 1962, and it took us this long to get another one. That's just insane. And hey, the monsters finally fight in the day. Now, technically, it is dusk, but I will take what I can get. I love the monster action in this movie, the designs, you know, Godzilla, Kong, I think everybody looks good. Mechagodzilla, I think the design, I'm 50-50 on the design. I'm not sure how I feel about it even all these years later. If Mechagodzilla does come back, and I feel like he has to, everybody loves Mechagodzilla, maybe like an updated kind of design would make more sense, but overall, I think this movie was fine. But again, I don't want to repeat myself, the human characters stink again in this movie, so let's move on. The most recent Godzilla movie we got was Godzilla x Kong, and my favorite thing about this movie was the marketing and PR around this movie going into the release, because they wanted to separate Godzilla x Kong so much from Godzilla Minus One, like it's not even funny. They made it as blatant and direct as humanly possible that Godzilla x Kong is nothing like Godzilla Minus One. One of my favorite quotes from the press of this movie was director Adam Wingard when he said, "I don't think there's anything fun about Godzilla and Kong getting along. They're more like a buddy cop kind of duo. They don't really like each other, but they have to work together. That's the pleasure of watching this, that sort of dysfunction." They're marketing this movie, or they were marketing this movie, as a buddy cop movie. You can't get any more farther away from Godzilla Minus One than saying your Godzilla movie is a buddy cop movie. Now, saying that, I like the buddy cop aspect of this movie. I like Godzilla vs. Kong. The monster fights were awesome. They finally just had fun. It's like they, you know, like hulked out of this, you know, this jacket that they were in where it was like Godzilla has to just be this. They finally decided to just have fun and give us a giant fire-breathing monster versus giant monkey. Giant monkey has a baby Kong, a Kratos Atreus storyline. Godzilla and Mothra are in love. There is an evil monkey and there's an evil ice Godzilla. Like, they finally just decided to have fun. Can you believe that this is the first time that King Kong and Mothra have ever seen each other? The first time they've ever been in a movie with each other? I'd love to know what Kong was thinking when he realized that the only thing that can calm Godzilla down is a giant moth. Speaking of the villains in this movie, I hate when the villains are just a carbon copy of the hero. I mean, we have Kong, and then we have Evil Kong, and then we have Godzilla, and we just have an ice Godzilla. I just think that's so boring, so lame, so generic, but Shimu did win me over when she saw the sun for the first time, so I'm all in and I will defend her with my life. We also got Godzilla sleeping in the Coliseum like a cat, so that's another plus for this movie. You can't hate it just based on those few scenes. And, you know, the only thing that the North American movies have never really gotten is how to make a serious, gritty, emotional story with Godzilla. And maybe just because of what Godzilla actually symbolizes, Toho are going to be the only studio that can ever pull that off. But making fun Godzilla movies isn't a bad thing. Having both of these, a super serious Godzilla movie and a super fun Godzilla movie at the same time, we have seen, like, it just worked. Like, we have the data, we have the budgets, we have the ticket sales, the merch, the toys that they're selling. We know that both of these things can work at the same time because they just did. So after Godzilla 1998, which was a disaster, we got 4 consistently good, if nothing else, North American Godzilla movies. And I think that's what really helped Godzilla rise back in popularity. Whether you think the legendary Godzilla movies, the Monsterverse movies, are good, great, none of them are really bad. They're, at very least, they're good, right? So we got this consistent string of Godzilla movies that re-established him in pop culture, at least outside of Japan. And then on top of that, we had Godzilla Minus One, which obviously helped being arguably the best Godzilla movie ever made. So we got the best Godzilla movie ever made, Godzilla Minus One, and a string of consistent Godzilla movies with the legendary Godzilla series, or Monsterverse series, whatever you want to call them. I always thought that the Monsterverse is like a weird way to describe these movies. I get it for like marketing, and it's like universe, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all of that. So like I understand why they picked that, but like Monsterverse, like the entire Monsterverse is carried by 2 monsters, Godzilla, King Kong. It's not like they've made a solo movie for any other monster. It's just these 2. It should be called like the Godzilla and King Kong universe. Like I don't think there will ever be another North American Godzilla movie or King Kong movie that will just have them. Like this buddy cop thing, we're printing money, baby. So I assume the next movie, which we know is going to be more Godzilla focused, King Kong is going to be in that movie. That I can guarantee. So in addition to the great movies that we've had over the past few years, Toho finally let Godzilla loose, and they're finally showcasing Godzilla in different content that's not just movies. I mean, we finally have an official Godzilla store. There has never been a Godzilla store until this one was launched, I believe, just a few years ago. So no matter where you live on planet Earth, not everything comes from Japan, so shipping time should be at least a little bit better. And this website is for the nerds. Obviously, it's for the casual Godzilla fans. You can pick up, Godzilla stuff like that, but almost every single villain or friend or other monster in the Godzilla franchise, no matter how popular or how niche, has some type of merch that you can buy of that monster on this store. This web store is for the nerds. It's marketed great at the casual and hardcore fan base of Godzilla. I mean, if you want a Jet Jaguar shirt, you can get one. In 2017, we finally got a Godzilla anime. Godzilla debuted in 1954, people. In 2017, we finally got a Godzilla anime. It eventually became a trilogy. Nobody really liked it. It's kind of long, kind of boring. But, a planet-sized Godzilla is an amazing concept, but that's all anybody ever talks about from these movies. Then we got Godzilla Singular Point, which nobody really liked either. So we're kind of 0 for 2 here with Godzilla animes. Honestly, the 1998 cartoon is probably the best animated Godzilla content that we've ever gotten, and that's hilarious. I don't think a Godzilla cartoon or anime is really that hard. You kind of make it Pokemon or Lilo and Stitch, where they just meet a new monster every episode. I mean, maybe not every episode, because eventually you would run out, but you could do so much more with Godzilla in a cartoon, I would imagine. So I don't know why it hasn't worked yet, but, the next time they announce another Godzilla anime, I am going to tune in. The last thing I want to talk about here with Godzilla's rise in popularity over the last few years is I think it really comes down to nostalgia. I think right now we're in a moment where nostalgia is so popular, and everything that had any kind of brand recognition before is kind of coming back in style, whether it's, Marvel or Star Wars, and not just in movies. I mean, just in music. Limp Bizkit is back and selling out arenas. Creed is cool again. Nickelback, all this other stuff. The WWE is more popular and more profitable than it's ever been. All of this nostalgic kind of stuff is just making so much money that you kind of have to take a kind of macro view, because it's not just like movies, or it's not just action movies or giant monster movies or this type of music or that type of music. It's everything. Like, nostalgia is the thing that's popular. Now, we can get into an interesting conversation about everything is a prequel or sequel or in this universe, or everything is like shared and it has to feed off something to even be, it has to be tied to something that was once popular, and how that's a problem with Hollywood and there's no originality. But that's not for this video. I just wanted to kind of talk about and at least put in my opinion of why I think Godzilla has really risen to popularity. The consistent North American movies, the crazy out of nowhere popularity of Minus One, Toho finally letting Godzilla free and letting him be in cartoons and animes and on all this merchandise, and make it easier to access all things Godzilla, plus with the rise of nostalgia that's really happening across any form of entertainment. And if you think I'm over-exaggerating that Toho is really letting Godzilla loose and be in these different forms of content, they're making Godzilla children's books, people. Not just one either. There is an entire series of Godzilla children's books where they teach you about counting and friendship and just being an overall better human. They're making Godzilla children's books, people. We've peaked. The one thing that the Godzilla franchise, Toho, I don't know who needs to approve this, but the one thing that needs to come back is Godzilla video games. The Melee kind of video games with Mortal Kombat and the one with like the Looney Tune characters that I'm forgetting, like those are all kind of popular now. Battle Royales are super popular. You don't even need to make a new Godzilla game. Just remake one of these and have, what a great way to introduce all of these random kind of obscure Godzilla characters. Get King Kong in there. Throw in, I don't know, throw in Cloverfield. Do like whatever you want. I cannot believe with the massive rise in popularity and profitability of Godzilla that it's 2024 and we still haven't gotten at least a remake of these games. You don't even need to make a completely new game from scratch. Just put them up on the Xbox store or PlayStation store or something. This seems like an easy win. And as far as the future of the Godzilla movies and series and all of that, what do I want? Bring it in. With all the love and passion and honesty in my heart, people of planet Earth, let the monsters talk. And I'm not saying this is a hot take or just something that I can make, a clip. I genuinely believe that there is a future in the Godzilla franchise where the monsters talk. Whether it's a fun Godzilla movie like Godzilla X Kong, or even a serious Godzilla movie. Let the monsters talk. And yes, I already know somebody has left a comment. They've done this before anyway. I mean, I can see the trailer now. Pretty typical Godzilla trailer, destruction, atomic breath, all that stuff. Fade into the title screen. Fade to black. We take a beat. Boom! We see Godzilla. We see his mouth. And he says something. Pick, whatever you want. He says that thing. Honestly, if he said let them fight, that would be pretty funny. Or let us fight, something like that. Something more clever would be funny. And then you end the trailer. You're telling me that wouldn't be trending all day? You're telling me people wouldn't go and buy tickets to a movie where they know that Godzilla and the other monsters talk? We're printing money here, baby. So besides the monsters talking, that's number 1 on my wish list for the future of Godzilla. Number 2, let them fight in the day. Never gonna let that one go. Number 3, as far as monsters, I think Gigan would be pretty cool. We haven't seen him since, 04, right? Final Wars, I believe. And I think the casual fans would really like Gigan. He's a giant monster with knives for hands and a giant buzzsaw on his chest. With movie technology and all that stuff now, it would probably be the most brutal Godzilla fight that we've ever seen. And I know earlier I said that I don't like villains that are just a copy of the hero, but ignore that I said that because I want Space Godzilla. I don't know why, but I've always liked Space Godzilla, and I actually think the name is great, like Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. I think that puts butts in the seats. And I think it would make sense to have an updated design for Space Godzilla. And speaking of an updated design, I think Destroya is probably going to be in the next North American Godzilla movie, if I had to guess. But he's got to be in one of the future ones, right? Whether it's something in Japan or something here in North America. And speaking of an updated design for Destroya, I mean, now we're talking. And I know some people are tired of the multiverse and the MCU Marvel stuff, but a movie with a bunch of different Godzillas? Yes. Immediately. Take my money. Godzilla 1998, Zilla meeting the original 1954 Godzilla? Godzilla Minus One meeting the Monsterverse Godzilla? Shin Godzilla meeting any of the other Godzillas? People have wanted Godzilla versus Cloverfield for years, Godzilla versus Pacific Rim for years. What else could we do? Godzilla versus Alien? Godzilla versus Predator? Godzilla's probably too big for that. But what if you do Predator in 1998 New York versus 98 Godzilla? Now we're talking. If you're asking me what I think the next villain in the next Monsterverse Godzilla movie is going to be, I'm 90% it's going to be Destroya. I just think that's where the series is going. I think the new director said that it's going to be... He did say it's going to be more Godzilla-focused and that it's going to be a little bit more serious. Who else? Ekon. I think it's going to be Destroya for marquee value, all that stuff. But I think it is time for a original North American monster to fight Godzilla. Because besides King Kong, who do we have? Cloverfield? If you count, like, the Pacific Rim, you know, Optimus Prime kind of stuff. Godzilla versus Optimus Prime. That would be pretty cool. But, like, you know, what other North American monster is there? The giant spider from, like, the 50s? The giant claw? Like, what are we talking about? Let's have a new original monster. That's my pick. Even though I'd love to see Destroya, I really hope a, you know, original monster is the next kind of a villain for Godzilla, at least in the Monsterverse. Do I want a sequel to Minus One or Shin Godzilla? Both of those movies were, you know, left open-ended on a cliffhanger. My guess for, you know, for marketing-wise, and it just makes sense to have Godzilla Minus One Part 2, because everybody has seen this movie, and this is the movie that brought Godzilla back into pop culture. It won an Oscar for, I mean, come on. So, logically, I think that's what we're gonna get. I don't think we're ever gonna get a sequel to Shin Godzilla. I really don't. I do love that design. It's probably the best atomic breath scene that we've ever gotten in the entire series, but that movie is more about, you know, government and criticizing government really kind of more than Godzilla. So my guess is we're getting Godzilla Minus One Part 2 way, like, the probability of that is infinitely way more than getting Shin Godzilla 2, unfortunately. But I do think the human characters in Godzilla Minus One, I think they need a break. So if Godzilla does come back in that universe, you know, let him go on vacation or something. Let Godzilla deal with somebody else. Godzilla has been around since 1954. 70 years it took Godzilla to win an Oscar, to become the most profitable and popular he's ever been. It took 38 movies to finally get to all of this success. Godzilla has always been a symbol. He always will be. So be like Godzilla and never give up on your dreams. And that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video. It really helps me out, really helps the channel out. Please subscribe if you haven't. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see going forward in the Godzilla franchise, whether it's the Monsterverse movies or anything happening in Japan with Minus One or Shin Godzilla. I'm really interested to see whether it's what hardcore fans want to see happen and what casual fans want to see happening. And if Godzilla Minus One is the best Godzilla movie of all time. To me, not even a question. Godzilla Minus One, and then the original, and then we can kind of debate about, you know, all the other movies. But again, thank you so much for watching.